So you've been saving for a while now, you've planned your trip, you've got a full tank of fuel, your car is packed and you are ready to hit the road. But do you know if your car can get you to and from safely and reliably? Well, today we're going to be going through some really basic checks you can do in your driveway at home with some basic hand tools to see if your car is ready for a trip. Let's get into it. So what tools are you going to need for this job? So it is super simple. All you're going to need is a socket set, a pry bar, it can be big or small, a rag and a jack, and that is literally all you are going to need. We're also going to separate this into 3 parts. So we're going to go under the bonnet, driveline and then suspension. So I reckon we hop in and get into it. Alright, so the first check is going to be one of the most basic and one of the most obvious, I suppose, and that is checking your oil, but not only checking it, checking the viscosity of the oil. So the first thing you're going to do, you want to pull your dipstick out and wipe it clean with your rag. Put it back into the dipstick hole, and then you'll just leave it there for a couple of seconds, pull it back out, and what you're looking for is the oil to be just under the full mark, which will be an F on your dipstick. If it is towards the low or even halfway, all you need to do, open your oil fill and just put in a little bit more oil until it's just under that F. You don't want too much either. If you've got too much oil, that's when you'll start doing rear main seals and stuff, because the oil will look for a place to escape. But if it's just under the full or just over, that is pretty much perfect. And then what you're going to need to do, which isn't always the nicest and you will get your hands dirty, but you just want to basically wipe off some of that oil off your dipstick, and you want to kind of try and separate it between your fingers just really slowly. And if the oil sticks between your fingers and kind of stays together, that means that it's good viscosity. If it's kind of watery and it won't stick at all, that means that you are due for an oil change and the oil is no longer doing its proper job. So that's all you need to do for that. Put the dipstick back in and that is your first check to do. Okay, so now you're going to move on to your fan. This is just the next thing I tend to do. So pretty much with your fan, when you spin it, there should be, if the car is hot, there should be quite a lot of resistance there. That means that your viscous hub is actually engaging. If you spin it when the car is hot and it just spins completely free, that means your viscous hub has worn out and it is no longer holding tension on that fan. But as you can see, even if I push it, it comes to pretty much a complete stop. So that's what you want to do. You also want to hold one of the fins and you kind of want to wiggle it in and out. If you can feel a lot of movement in there and there's kind of play, that means again your viscous hub has worn out. Obviously the fins have a little bit of flex in them, but if that viscous hub moves back and forth, it means you really do need to change that pretty much straight away. Now another good check to do is look at just the condition of these blades / fins on the fan. So if you look through there shouldn't be any chips, there shouldn't be any cracks. So as you can see, these are all intact. And then another good thing to do is look at this gap just down there between each of the fan blades through there. And if there's any cracks there, that can tend to be an area where they'll start to crack, especially if you're doing lots of mud driving and stuff. So if there's no cracks there, no damage on those actual blades, and there's resistance and it's not just moving in and out freely, then good chances are that your viscous hub and fan are in good condition. Now, whilst we're on the topic of cooling system, you want to take off your radiator cap and make sure the car is completely cold when you take this off. So pretty much with a radiator cap, the main thing to look for is that spring is holding pressure. So obviously your cooling system is heavily pressurized, and if that spring fails, it can just lead to a lack of pressure, and then your system, if it's no longer pressurized, it's no longer going to cool your engine properly. So if there's a bit of rust around there, that's pretty normal. These do get rusty. But the main thing is when you press in like that against that spring, there should be a fair amount of resistance. If you can just press it in really easily, it normally means that you need a new radiator cap, which is like a 30-second job and they're pretty cheap. But that's pretty good. There's a fair amount of resistance there. I can't push it down. I can only just push it down like that. So I know that is okay. Whilst the radiator cap is off, you want to look in your radiator fill port. So pretty much, depending on what car, some cars will be red, pink or green. So mine is green. I can see that it hasn't got any kind of milky color to it. It isn't clogged full of rust or mud or dirt, and it's at the correct level. So I know that coolant is good. Now you want to look on your hoses. So pretty much these hoses are pretty indestructible most of the time. So with these hoses, there's no movement in them. They have no movement whatsoever. So pretty much they will, even if they're crusty and they're old, they will just sit like this, and they will never crack. But as soon as, if you're working in the engine bay or something, or you grab this, if there's any movement, it will crack those areas that have just been getting crusty, old and brittle. So mainly you want to look at the underside of the hose. It should have quite a lot of flex in it. If you squeeze the hose, it shouldn't feel crunchy or like it's going to crack. It should just be nice, kind of soft rubber. And if I feel the underside of my hose, it does feel really brittle and old and getting just kind of, that crusty feel. So you want to do that for all the hoses. So your heater hoses, power steering hoses, radiator hoses, just give them a squeeze. They should be rubbery, nice. There should be no kind of crunchiness. But on a few of my hoses on the bottom side, they are really crunchy. So like I said, these checks are all really basic. I mean, you're not going to be pulling the head off or pulling the sump out to look at the bearings or pulling each injector out. You're just doing basic checks that you can kind of give you an overall idea of how the car's looking. Obviously, it's not going to tell you everything about the internals of the engines, but you can get a pretty good idea. And obviously it varies from trip to trip. Like if you've got a small oil leak and you're just going away for, a few nights, a couple of hours away, you might go, that's all right, that's fine, I'll leave it and I'll deal with it another time. But if you're doing maybe a massive trip up to the Cape or Fraser Island or something, and you're going to be gone for, weeks, then you kind of go, well, I'm going to get all these jobs done before I go. So you just kind of evaluate in your mind, but these are just how to check, like, in an overall sense on your car. All right, we'll move on now. We'll go on to your belts. So the main thing you want to look for on your belts is, again, it's just kind of overall condition. Look for any cracks along the top of your belt and underneath your belt. Look to see if any of the ridges or grooves are missing. If there are, it can cause your belt to slip, which isn't, always immediately dangerous. But if there are heaps missing, there's cracks, it's well worth doing your belt, because if you lose, this is my AC belt, so if I lose that, I just don't have aircon. But below it are my V belts, so that controls alternator, power steering, water pump, all of that. So if I lose them, I'm in a bit of trouble. So just overall condition, feel the actual pulleys that they run on. There should be no play in and out. So as you can see, there's a little bit of play on that one. So I might just tighten that up before I go. And then, just press the belts in. There should be a bit of resistance on them, not too much, but just a little bit of movement in them. And overall, they all look pretty good. So I also did in my spare parts video say bring a set of belts, because they can randomly just kind of split or lash off. So it's a good idea to bring a spare set, but these are in all right condition. All right, so your steering shaft that connects to your steering box runs through here, and there is a set of uni joints. So what you want to check for, this is really important, you want to wiggle your unis in and out. So there should be a bit of side movement like that. That's just kind of play in the steering box and the wheel. But you shouldn't have any in and out movement. So if you move it side to side on both uni joints, like that, there shouldn't be any play there. If there is any play, I would highly recommend being very cautious with driving, because that's the only link connecting your steering wheel to the steering box. So in and out, no play there, a little bit of side movement, which is all right. So I know that uni shaft is okay. And these are the heater hoses running kind of into your firewall that you want to check as well. So looking just for the same thing as before, and these are actually in a lot better condition than that radiator hose, so that is fine. Now on many four-wheel drives, you will have your fuel filter housing, and then you'll have a little primer at the top. So pretty easy test for this. What you want to do is you want to pump it down, and within, I don't know, probably 6 pumps, that should become pretty firm. So this is getting pretty firm, and that means that your fuel system is building pressure. So if you can just keep going and it's really loose, it means that your hole from your tank to here is not going to be able to build pressure. But if it goes firm, that's pretty much just fuel is getting up to that filter. So that is all good. Whilst we're on the radiator, you want to look for these little fins. So pretty much these little fins is what your coolant will pass through. So your coolant comes into your radiator, it passes through all of these fins, and then out back into your thermostat and engine. And pretty much that is getting cooled by your fan in there, sucking the air through your radiator, and cooling all of that coolant. So you just want to look for any, you know, normally they'll be a little bit bent, but you don't want too many bent. You don't want to see too much mud build up or anything. So this is an old radiator, but overall it's in all right condition and we've got no leaks. Okay, so now you have your, if you've got a manual transmission, you have your clutch fluid reservoir and your master cylinder, your clutch master cylinder, and then your brake fluid reservoir and your brake master cylinder. So pretty much what you want to check is the level. So if you pop this off, you can look in there between the max and the minimum on here. And you also want to get a bit on your finger, and it should be kind of a clear color. If it's kind of going brown or got heaps of debris in it, you might want to change that. Same with your clutch fluid, should be between the max and the minimum, and they should be similar colors, both clear and nice and smooth. So they're the initial checks. You also want to look around the actual master cylinder areas and have a look for leaks or cracks. So there's nothing here. All the brake lines look all right. They're not cracking or too bent. And now we'll actually go into the car and check with the pedals to see how they're exactly performing. So in your cab, you've got the brake and clutch pedal. Now with your brake pedal, you want the car off and not running, and you want to press it in. And if it goes firm quickly, that means it's good. It shouldn't be able to be pressed all the way in and out. It should be go really firm, really quick, and pretty much there is no vacuum pressure in your brake booster now, because whilst the car is off, there's no vacuum, meaning that that goes really tight and firm quickly. That's what you want. Now, when you start your car, this should go soft again. Now that there's vacuum pressure through your brake booster, should go soft again and push all the way in and out and not go firm. So with the clutch, pretty much it's easy. You're just going to put your clutch in and you should basically, there should be no resistance. Obviously there will be a bit resistance depending on what clutch you have and if it's new, and there will be generally some resistance just from the pedal, but you shouldn't have to really work to press it in and then pull it out. There should be no odd noises, there should be no scraping or grinding or anything, and it should just go in and out freely. And now what you want to do is super simple. You're going to put it in gear, so put it in first gear, and you're going to slowly take your foot off and feel for when it wants to bite. So as you can see, that's in first gear now. I take it off, I'm going to put my foot on the brake, and you can hear the car start to want to stall. That means the clutch is biting nice and early. The earlier it starts to make that lower tone, the better. If you have to pull the clutch really far out and it still isn't biting, it means your clutch is severely worn. But if you put it in gear, you pull it out and it starts to kind of bite and stall out early, it means that your clutch is healthy. So really easy to check, and yeah, that's kind of your most ideal or best indicator to tell if your clutch is healthy or worn. Final few checks, feel your battery terminals, so move the eyes up and down and there should be no play on them. If there is, you will need to tighten. There's no play on them. And then also what you're going to want to do is you're just going to want to look for leaks. So you'll go obviously under the car because gravity will force any leaks to go down, but pretty much look for the around the rocker cover up here. So if there's any leaks out of there, it's normally not a massive deal. It's not crucial, but good idea to keep an eye on. Another common place for most cars is on this intake manifold along the gasket here, because pretty much what is happening there is through your kind of crankcase breather, which is there, any kind of oil residue that is getting spun back into your intake is then going to go through your intake manifold, and if your gasket is worn, that's when you'll start to get kind of oil leaks and residue forming around there. So it is not a major thing, but if it's starting to leak heavily, you do kind of want to get onto it, because it's a pretty easy job to do as well. Now just some common sense stuff. So if you start your car, should start pretty easily within a few cranks, meaning that all your timing, your starter, ignition, fuel delivery, air intake, all of that is working as it should. And then your should have relatively responsive throttle, as it does. Look at your exhaust, and there should be no kind of white smoke. And then in the engine, make sure your belts are running all right, your fan is spinning. Feel your brake, your cooling hoses, and they should be firm as cooling is rushing through them. And then give it a rev and listen for any unusual noise. Okay, so now you want to take out your air filter. So the best thing to check with an air filter is pretty much you've got two sides. Obviously, you've got your outside and your inside. Now, if the outside has a bit of dust or dirt or debris in it or whatever, that's normally okay because, you know, obviously it is going to the longer you drive, but it's your inside that you really want to look for. If there is dust, debris, dirt, anything on that inside, change your filter immediately. That's pretty much the side that is the air's coming through here, going to the inside and then getting sucked through into your intake, which then goes into your engine. So if there is dust and dirt on that inside, change your filter immediately. If there's dust or kind of debris or whatever on the outside, still change it. It's not a bad idea, but you can normally just give it a few taps, get rid of some of that dust, and it'll be okay. But that inside is what you really want to look for. Now, like I said, I am not a mechanic by any means. This is stuff I do before a trip that I've learned, and I'm just kind of showing you the things I make sure are okay with my car before I leave. Feel free to let me know anything that I've missed or that you guys do, because yeah, I really don't know that much. Just going through kind of the basics and thought I'd make a video. So now we'll move to under the car, and this is where you want your pry bar because we're having a look at our suspension. Okay, so I'm under the car now, and what you want to look for first, your brake pads. So your brake pads are obviously the two little pads either side inside your brake caliper here. And what you want about 5 to 8 mil of thickness on your pads. If your pads are really thin, that means they are worn. So obviously you want to check both sides, and you've got your pads in the front and then your pads in the rear. Now you want to check your unis on your front drive shaft. So your uni joints are here, and pretty much you're going to spin your shaft, and if you move your shaft up and down, there will be a little bit of movement in this slip yoke here, but there shouldn't be any movement in these unis. So if you push it up and down, a little bit is okay, a tiny bit, but you don't want much at all. So that feels fine. And test this side as well. Yep, they all feel completely fine. Now, whilst you're under the car, it's also a good chance to check for any more leaks. So we look at our lower radiator hose there. You can look around our sump gasket. Our rear main seal has a little bit of a leak, but nothing too bad. A power steering pump is leaking a bit. And just look for any leaks from your diff. You can also look at your swivel hubs, which we have just recently done, and I made a video on that. So no leaking there. And you want to look at your shock bores. No leaking on them. Your pinion seal, got no leaking there. So overall, all good. Throughout your whole car, you also want to look at all the bushings. Now is when you get your little pry bar. And for my car, I'm going to go through the radius arms, the panard, and then also the control arms in the rear. So you just want to get the pry bar between the bracket and the bushing and wiggle it side to side. And there should be a little bit of movement in there, but nothing crazy, nothing like it shouldn't wobble around, shouldn't move up or down. So if you go from the top, there we go, they're all good. Check the panard and check this side. You don't have to go crazy. You can get a pretty good indication pretty soon. So these bushings are good. We'll check this bracket here, but I'm happy with these front bushers. Now, a really important one is your drag link here. So with your drag link, it'll twist to and from like that. But the main thing is these ball joints at the end. So pretty much you want to grab by the ball joint on your tie rod and pull it up and down. And if there's any clunking or movement, you need to change them ASAP. So here are your tie rods, and there's a ball joint in here. So like I said, it should twist like that, but there shouldn't. If you pull that up and down, there should be no movement in there whatsoever. If there is any movement, it's worn, and you need to change that, because this, your drag link, connects to the pitman arm on your steering box, comes all the way down, and that's what turns your wheels left and right. So no movement up or down in that, so that is all good. So it is the exact same with this tie rod at the back. So this connects to your left and right knuckle, and this is the exact same as the drag link. So when you twist this, it should twist back and forth like that, but you want to do the exact same check, and if you push it up and down, there should be no movement in those tie rod ends. Now we've moved to the rear, and it's all pretty much the same stuff as the front. So we've got our panad here, so get your pry bar, and again feel those bushings. So there's a bit of movement in them, but that's all right. So you just want to feel for that movement there. You also obviously want to look at the bushes on your control arms and stuff like that, and your trailing arms side to side. Yep, they feel all good. And then you also want to look at just your shocks again, make sure there's no leaking there. You want to look at around your rim and make sure your inner axle seal hasn't let go. Look around your diff and everything. So overall it's a bit more simple than the front, because obviously you haven't got the steering components, but still similar checks. So our last check is just going to be this uni, the rear tail shaft. So this is the one that spins your rear diff. So same as the front, hold the uni, push it up and down. This one won't spin if you've got it in gear. Just push it up and down, and there's no play in those unis. No leaking at this seal here that connects to the trans. So I'm happy with that, and now we'll check the rear. So barely any play there, and there's no leaking at that rear pinion seal. All right, so final check is going to be your wheel bearings. So the first thing you want to do, just spin your wheel freely, and it should move with a little bit of resistance, not too much and not too little, just like that. Then you're going to want to hold it at 12 and 6 o'clock, and you want to wiggle it in and out. There should be no play whatsoever. If there is, you may need to tighten your bearings or replace them. So there's no play in there. Side to side, that's a bit of movement in the tyre. There's not too much movement there. So our wheel bearings and kingpin bearings are all right. It spins freely, and while you're here, just check the tread on your tyres, look at the sidewall, make sure there's no cracking, bulging, splits or anything, so that's all good. And if you do have lockers installed, now's a good time. Put your manual locking hub in, so now we are in 4-wheel drive, like that. Go into your cab and turn on your lockers. And now, with your locker in, that should come to a stop, meaning that it's no longer an open diff and your lockers are working. Now, you're going to want to do the exact same test to the other side and your rear 2 wheels. I've already done them, so I won't do it now, but go to the other side, jack it up, do the same test, and then do the same for both sides on your rear. And that is how you test your tyres, kingpin bearings, wheel bearings, and lockers if you have any. So, we're on. So the final thing to check before you do the road test is you want to crack your filler plug on both front and rear diff, transfer case and transmission. Most cars, the spec is for most cars that fluid should just start to drip out of the top, just a small drip, and that means that it is at the top of its level. If there's no fluid, pump some in, or if you are unsure about the condition of the fluid, or it's dark or has chunks in it, just completely replace the fluid. Mine are all fine, but I would suggest checking that as well if you haven't in a while. So the final checks that you're going to do is just a road test. So get on the road, get the car up to 100 Ks, come back down from 100 Ks, test your braking, go up through all the gears, down through all the gears, keep both windows down and listen for any noises, rattles when you turn, when you go over bumps, pretty much anything like that. You're also going to be just looking at obviously your dash, looking for any lights, your temperature gauge, oil pressure gauge if you have something like that. All just kind of, I guess, common sense stuff that you just do normally driving. So once you've done that, that's probably actually going to be your best test, rather than looking through everything else. So once you've done all of that, you're pretty much ready to go. And yeah, I've got a trip coming up before long, so these are just, again, real world routine checks that I do. I'm not a mechanic, it's just stuff I do before any trip. So I hope you all enjoyed. Feel free to like and subscribe if you want to. You certainly do not have to. I'll be posting probably next week or in a couple of weeks, but until then, hope you enjoy, stay safe, and I'll see you later.